Well, hello again. It's been, I guess, late spring since we did these weekly videos, and then we were able to get together again, so I could see most of you on a regular basis. But since we've been shut down now for a few weeks again, and we can't gather in person, I thought it would be good to give a little bit of a Christmas hello, wish, a little devotional here this afternoon before we get to the official holiday season, which will I actually begin, I guess, tomorrow evening, Christmas Eve, and then head on through for the next week or 10 days as we head toward the new year. As I was thinking about Christmas again, I was reminded of the verse in the account of the shepherds being visited by the angels. And in Luke chapter 2 and in verse 10, it says that the angel said to them, that being the shepherds, "Fear not. For behold, I bring you good news of great joy, which will be for all the people." The words "fear not" resonated with me, especially this year, this Christmas of 2020. Because I thought to myself, if anything that marked, any word that may have marked the year that has now almost come to an end, any word may have marked this year, a word that comes to mind substantially is the word fear. There's been a lot of fear, and there continues to be a lot of fear in our society, in our world. And as you know and I know, it largely relates to the pandemic of the COVID-19 virus that we have been experiencing since last March. Now, on the one hand, I would suggest to us that there is a legitimate reason for fear in one sense, better probably defined as caution. There's a healthy kind of fear in that regard, that we need to be on our guard, we need to take precautions, we need to be serious in terms of a virus that especially is doing considerable harm to our senior population, to those in hospitals, those who are ill, those who are frail, and we need to recognize that. I think especially if someone like my own mom, and many of you have people like that in your own families who has a number of what they call comorbidities, and she's very prone to this. I know a neighbor down the street who had heart issues and a virus. Heart issues and a stroke just in the last little while. I grew up down the street from him. He passed away just in the last few weeks, and he also had COVID, which seems to make whatever bad situations we have worse, to the point that if you're in a bad enough condition, you could die. And so in that regard, we want to be cautious and take reasonable precautions with respect to the virus. I'm particularly aware of people who are in the healthcare profession or those who work in care homes. Workers in those settings need to exercise a reasonable degree of caution. And I understand that, and I don't want to dismiss that lightly. Yet, on the other hand, there's also evidence in our world which takes that healthy precaution and that, what we might call that sense of normal fear, in that sense of the word, and can run with it to an irrational level. I was just looking out my window just yesterday, and there were these two bike riders going by my window. And I was struck by the fact that they were fairly young, from what I could tell, that they were both wearing masks as they were riding their bike down the road. And I thought to myself that what that indicated to me is that they were exhibiting, or the fact that they were riding bikes with masks was indicating to me that they were probably dealing with a significant amount of irrational fear. No risk involved in that kind of an activity, but something within them was perhaps even paranoid of catching this COVID virus, even in engaged in that kind of an activity. But our world, as you and I know, has been filled with fear of this illness, and ultimately, I would suggest to us, a fear of death. We're afraid. Many people are afraid of dying. And so fear has been rampant in our culture, in our society, in our world over this past year. That thought took me back to a verse in Matthew chapter 10 and verse 28, where Jesus is talking actually in the context of persecution, which is not the context that we're in right now, but in the context of persecution, he says these words. He says, "Do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell." On the one hand, we can have a fear of physical death, as COVID-19 illustrates for us and has indicated that to us on a very significant level. People are afraid of dying. And Jesus addresses that in terms of persecution, where people who may be opposed to Christians may threaten their lives. And Jesus said, don't be afraid of them, because they can only do so much. And Jesus goes on to say that the real fear that we should have is a spiritual fear, a fear of spiritual death, which is exceedingly more significant than being afraid of physical death. I find it interesting, as I've observed our world around us for these past 9 or 10 months, that most people's concern is physical death. And they have very little, if any, concern for the condition of their spiritual lives, concern for or regarding spiritual death. But the scriptures tell us that that should be our prime concern. If we're to be afraid of anything, that's what we should be afraid of. And that's where the good news of Christmas comes in. Christmas came, Christ came, as the angels announced, to remove the fear that we might have of spiritually dying. Christ came to give us spiritual life so that we would never have to be afraid of the spiritual death that awaits people who are outside of a relationship with God. And so, again, the verse from Luke chapter 2 and verse 10, where the angel says to the shepherds, "Fear not, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy, which will be for all the people." And so I hope that you, during this Christmas season, would be relieved of any fear that you may have, because the spiritual fear has been taken care of. And if the spiritual fear has been taken care of, then the physical fear also is taken care of as a secondary benefit. Because the Lord, who has taken care of our spiritual lives, will also take care of our physical lives. And we are in his sovereign hand, in his providential care, so that all fear can be removed. And so I want to wish you a very merry, fearless Christmas this 2020. May you experience the joy of the birth of our Lord again. And as we enter a new year, 2021, may that peace that only he can offer, go with you. Have a very blessed Christmas.